Welcome, AD. Irving here. All right.
How you doing, Irving?
Great, thank you. Well,
you get a beer in you, so you're good.
Yes, it is excellent. Let me just have a quick drink here. We got Spec Ops The Line, which we both have been playing here over the course of the weekend. We're way behind the curve on this. This game was released in 2012, but I've been meaning to play it for some time just because of what other people have said about it. And after I completed it, I recommended it to you.
And I don't know whether to thank you or throttle you for that recommendation.
We'll find out here by the end of the conversation. So first of all, I wanted to just get in and talk about gameplay and control. And to start off, was the gameplay and control fun?
It was very reminiscent of Gears of War, and I initially had a real problem with Gears of War just because the whole cover-based was difficult for me to just kind of deal with because I'm so used to just kind of more sandbox where you're running around shooting people, maybe hide behind something, but not true cover. Once I adapted the gameplay, it was very intuitive. There were some spots. Actually, it was probably better in gameplay than Gears of War was in terms of being able to get out of cover and get into cover. But there were definitely some frustrating moments, like if you weren't facing the cover exactly, it wouldn't take cover and it wouldn't get out. But the game control itself was very intuitive. It was quite fun, actually.
I thought the feel of the guns and the shooting mechanics, I felt like were really well done. I thought it felt pretty realistic. Obviously, I've never been to war, but compared to other shooters, and I guess for people that have not played, it's a third-person cover-based shooter. And I thought the gunplay was good. Maybe not enough variety for me. I couldn't really tell the difference between a SCAR and a AK-47, and maybe that's the way that it's supposed to be. Again, I'm not an expert on these things, but it just didn't feel varied enough, I guess. But for the setting and for what it was, I suppose it was probably the way that they designed it to be.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I noticed is mainly with the use of the reticle and how well you could actually pinpoint people and see down the line. I think that was the difference I noticed in the guns. But you're right, in the actual mechanics of the firing of the guns, there wasn't a whole lot of difference between using a pistol and using a submachine gun and using an actual AR-15. Well, it wasn't the AR-15, but a fully automatic rifle. But I did notice, in trying to locate people, the reticle itself, at different distances and stuff. And I think they got the actual mechanics of the gun in terms of distance and what it does to somebody, the damage it did, all that kind of stuff. I think they did a great job of that. But the feel of the difference between shooting the guns was definitely not very great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely would agree with that. But overall, I guess I just felt like it felt good. I felt like the control was good. Personally, I had a little bit of struggle with the cover base, like you mentioned early on, maybe in the first hour. But after that, I sort of got the hang of it. The one difference I guess I'll mention too is that you played with an Xbox controller and I played with keyboard and mouse. So I do think that there's always a little bit different there. I felt like the aiming was excellent with the reticle. I thought
did you try the controller?
I did. I switched at one point, and the reason that I switched to the controller was because I was struggling with the cover-based. Getting into cover was driving me crazy, and I couldn't figure it out. I sort of got stuck at a point and tried to remedy that through the controller, but then I can't aim with the controller because I'm now a keyboard and mouse guy, especially when it comes to shooters.
It's faster, right?
I don't know. For me, it is, yes, absolutely. I mean, and it should be in theory. It's 1-to-1 aiming, where wherever you point the mouse is where the reticle will point. Where, if you think about it, with your thumb, it's not as responsive or quick. But I guarantee you, I could line up against 10 kids right now that were using the controller, and I'm on a keyboard and mouse, and they'd own me.
Yeah, well, they're all 10 years old, so that's what happens. Damn 10-year-olds with so much free time.
So yeah, I would say overall control felt good.
It was a fun from a gameplay standpoint and control standpoint. It was very intuitive. It was very fun from that standpoint. And that's why I actually went back and played it again. We'll get into this, but that at the end of my first round, I did not want to. But actually, the gameplay itself was enjoyable enough that I actually wanted to go back and play it again, simply because it was a fun game play.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, and we will get into that. I guess just to wrap up the gameplay and control section, did you feel that the game played it safe in terms of gameplay mechanics, or did it try something new? Was there anything new in there that you had never done before?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, I think the genre is not played out per se, but very close to played out. I mean, there's not a whole lot they can do in terms of creating something new. It's mainly just, can you improve on the existing models? And I think it's very difficult to improve on so many existing models that have over the course of the last decade is when we've really seen first person or third person shooters a lot. I don't think there's a whole lot they could have done, but I didn't notice anything new. Did you?
I didn't. I just wanted to throw it out there to see if you did. I was trying to think of, obviously, one of the big gameplay mechanics that we probably could talk about under the story were the choices, and we'll definitely get into that. I thought that was something that was completely new. But again, do you put that under story or do you put that under gameplay? We're going to put it under story for the sake of this conversation, but that certainly was. But otherwise, yeah, it's cover-based shooting followed by you're on rails on the side of the truck shooting people, or you're in the helicopter shooting people, or you're on the turret shooting people. I mean, it was a lot of shooting people, and it got to the point where it was almost too much shooting people. But we'll talk about that as well. Anything else to add under gameplay or control?
No, I was going to ask you. Had Gears of War not existed, this definitely would have been something new. Are there other games like Gears of War that have been out, or is this kind of the only other one you've seen, which was mainly just a truly cover-based game?
I was just thinking about that, and I didn't do the research to find out how many more games there might be like this one that are this third-person cover-based. I guess, you and I both recently played Tomb Raider. I guess we could probably classify Tomb Raider as something that was semi-cover based third person. Now it's not as reliant on the cover based as this game was or as Gears is, but would you say that had quite a bit of cover based action in it?
Yeah, that was kind of what I would term more realistic in terms of you could use cover if you wanted to, but it wasn't something that was more, as you just said, more reliant on cover based. Like I felt like this was something that if you try standing out in the open, you're done. I mean, there's no way to do it. You have to get undercover and work about that. But actually, that reminds me of one thing within the gameplay. There were a lot of times I was undercover. We talked about the fact it was difficult to get into cover because you'd face the wrong way. But there were a lot of times I was in cover, and I couldn't face anything. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't shoot at what I wanted to because it wouldn't let me get out. So it was interesting in that terms. And I know it's difficult to program this kind of stuff. But it was sucked being behind, a wall.
But it was a frustration.
Yeah, being behind a wall and looking at your enemies and trying to find them, and it wouldn't allow you to shoot them.
I think I know what you're talking about. If you were on the edge of cover and you could look around it, but if you were sort of in the maybe 2/3 of the way or more than a third of the way into the cover, and it was a taller cover base, so it was a standing cover instead of a kneeling cover, then you couldn't peek around the corner until you inched over to the side. Is that kind of what you were experiencing?
It was a little bit of that for sure. Like, you could look to the side and maybe you couldn't see somebody. If you were looking to the right side, you couldn't see somebody to the left. But I think what I'm thinking of was when I got into the aquarium section and there were people below you, and I was down at a kneeling one, and it wouldn't let you go up and over and stay kneeling and aim down below.
Oh, okay.
And it was tough, and I even couldn't even aim above. There were just a couple times I remember thinking, God, why can I not shoot from this position? This seems like it. So
a little frustrating. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good stuff. I think that there were parts that were great and parts that were frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned about the cover based, I do think that if Gears of War hadn't come around, yes, it would have been very innovative. But in terms of a military shooter, I like the idea that it was cover-based, because if I was at war, if I was in the military, I would think that I would be hiding behind everything that I possibly could. So,
if you got that many guys shooting at you, God's sakes, get some cover.
So let's give it some realism points. Now, the other team, or whoever we're shooting at, they probably should find some cover.
Yeah, probably should have, yes.
They're kind of standing out in the open there a lot.
Yeah, well, they were trained by the CIA, so it didn't work out so well.
Oh, right. I'm glad that you knew that, because I wasn't sure who they were trained by. Anyway, moving on now to the graphics and visuals performance section here. Did you think it looked good? Did you like the environment and the setting?
The environment, no, because we were getting shot at by a lot of people and I couldn't understand.
No, I mean the setting of where it was. Yeah,
the look of the game was actually very good. I think visually, the graphics were very, very clean. There were moments when I felt it was a little washed out, and I don't know if that was just the way we were looking at it, but
colors.
Yeah, just a little washed out. It wasn't quite as sharp in certain times, but I don't know if that's because the frame rate was. I'm not a techie, so I don't know all this stuff. I don't know if that could have been adjusted if that was just the game itself. But it stands up to any game that came out around 2012 in terms of graphics. Mm-hmm. I thought that just the immersion of Dubai being in a sandstorm, how they created the sandstorms and what you had to do in dealing with that. I think that was very realistic, and that was quite clever. The buildings themselves were amazing. The cars looked good. Everything looked really good, really sharp.
Yeah, I liked the interiors. Some of the you mentioned the aquarium, and some of that toward the end of the game where you come in where there's basically you're surrounded by an aquarium down below and beside you, above you. I thought the color and just the level design or the graphical design there at that point was pretty awesome, pretty remarkable. I thought that was good, and I couldn't say that I'd really seen anything like that before. It sort of reminded me of the first BioShock, that sort of underwater feel. But I was impressed with that.
Yeah. So I wonder how true to form Dubai was. Like, I wonder if they just kind of threw up a bunch of big buildings, or if they actually took a street map of Dubai and tried to create things as close as possible. I mean, there are a couple of buildings I saw that do exist in Dubai. They're the most famous ones, but I really wonder how much of the city was truly actually Dubai.
Yeah, there was that one part where you see the tennis court on top of the building. I thought that was pretty cool. I at least have seen that online. I don't know if that's a real thing. I assume it's a real thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool place to put the game, a cool environment. When I first started out, it was a little bland and repetitive, but then I really grew to appreciate it as the game kind of went on. And I agree with you on the sandstorm part. That was pretty cool. As far as the, technically speaking and frame rate wise, for me, it held up great. We played it on 1080p on PC with all the settings maxed, and I had very little stutter or slowdown or frame rate drops that I noticed. It ran really, really well.
I felt like I was playing on a console, so for me it was perfect.
Yeah, you're not going to notice any difference. It should have been better than the console.
There's a reason to call me the ancient gamer.
Well, it was 60 frames per second, so that's something that you're probably not used to playing on console, and I would assume you noticed that, just that the animation's a little more fluid.
Sure.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that then.
I don't notice that kind of stuff. Unless it skips, that's the only thing I really notice.
Yeah, if it stutters, if it starts to look like a PowerPoint slideshow, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So we'll move on now to story. And I want to include in there the length of the game. And maybe that's the place to start because it's the less controversial of the two. But the length, what did you think? We've had this discussion before. Would you rather buy a game that gives you 60 hours of gameplay, but it's incredibly repetitive, a la Skyrim or a la GTA? Or do you want something that's, 4 to 6 hours that's really, really immersive, and at the end of it makes you wish there was longer? Like BioShock, for me, was that game. I think it was like 7 hours. I finished it in 7.5. And at the end of it, when I finished the initial one, I was like, oh my God, I want more of this game, more of this game, more of this game. That was you in BioShock?
Yeah. Yeah, the initial BioShock. This one, it was we talked about 4 to 6 hours. I think, we both finished it in about 6 hours. And at the end of it, we talked about this. I wanted it over so much sooner, but I don't think it was because it wasn't fun, like from a gameplay standpoint. It was because the story itself and the decisions really made me just question a lot of myself and a lot of the developers and a lot of people playing it. And it was just, it felt much longer than 6 hours.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. So I started the game probably a year ago. I was on the second chapter, and that's where I picked it up this weekend and started to play. I didn't quite know how long it was. I didn't really read about it at all when I first got into it, but I thought, I'll just give it a shot and I'll keep going. And, about 4 hours later, I found myself hating my life and just wanting it to end. And at one point, the fiance comes in and says, "What are you doing? When are you going to be done?" And I was like, "Look, I'm not even enjoying this anymore. I just need to know what happens with this story. I hate myself and all of the terrible things that I'm doing. It is not fun anymore. I want it to be over." Just because I was motivated to find out what happened with the story. And that's a true story of me playing this game.
Well, I had the exact same experience. I mean, I played for the first couple hours. I watched you play for a little bit. I played for the first couple hours, and I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. And then it forced you to kind of make some decisions, and you started to get a better understanding for the story and what was going on. And you started going, holy fuck, really? I mean, is this really what I'm forced to do? Is this something? And then by the end of it, as I said, I was about 5 hours in, but it felt like I was about 10 hours in. And I was the same way you were. I was at the end of it, I was like, God, I really just want to see what in the fuck is going on. I don't want to finish this. I don't want to keep playing, but I have to. It was basically driven to get to the end of the story to find out what the producers and developers actually created at the end, of what their thought was and their purpose.
Just wanted to get to the point to find out, what did Walker do? Why is he doing this? Why, what is his purpose? Why?
Yeah.
That's the only question I wanted answered at that point, was just, this has gone completely
tits up.
Yeah, it's batshit crazy here, and it seems like there is no fucking reason to even be here in the first place, and it's madness, total madness, and yeah. I wanted to find out what was going on.
The interesting thing to me is I truly do believe that the decisions he make mirror a lot of what soldiers have to go through and a lot of their experiences. It would be interesting to sit down with soldiers, especially ones dealing with PTSD, and truly talk about where it came from. I understand, the concept of getting shot at all the time is going to give you that, but I guarantee a lot of it is the decisions they're forced to make. The people they have to kill, and just the things they have to do in order to fulfill a mission, which sucks because a lot of missions are basically just rich white dudes saying, hey, you've got to make this, we want this done, and they don't give any real thought to who's harmed by it. Mm-hmm. And that was for me what it felt like. Not just
rich white dudes, but just people in power in general that don't actually have to go and face the decisions that these guys have to make. I'd love to have a chance to speak with the writers, because to me it felt like the story was a political statement.
As I said, I hope that it was. I mean, I hope. The way I look at it is, and the only reason I actually was able to push through, what I thought to myself was, okay, they're actually, and you brought this up, they're actually forcing you to think about what war actually does, how war actually feels, and they're trying to get people to say, wow, I mean, we've got people, we've got brothers, sisters, cousins, people down the street, neighbor boys, neighbor girls, fighting for a country, do we actually know what they're doing and what they're dealing with? And I hope that was their intent, because the only other option is they really wanted to, piss people off and
just wanted to fuck with people.
Yeah, so
I don't think that would be the case, because if you think about what sells today, just what sells in general, it's mindless violence and just idiocy, right? I mean, It's easy to pump out another Call of Duty game. No offense to Call of Duty. Some of those I enjoy, but you know what I mean. It's you're the hero and you're gonna go kill 1,000 people and you're awesome and amazing. And here you are not a hero. I mean, to the point where at the end, not only do you want it to end, but maybe you want my own life to end, because it's like, this character does not deserve to live. And obviously that's one of the major choices that it gives you in the game.
Yeah, I mean,
very interesting.
With the stuff you have to do, I mean, like the whole mortar scene was just, that was a point where I was basically done. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? I have no other option but to do this scene and then find
the phosphorus.
Find out what happened. And you're like, I mean, really? And then it's, after that, both your guys are like, what are we doing? I mean, look what you made us do. And it's like, nope, we're pushing on. We're pushing on. And it's like, why at this point are you still pushing on? What do you hope to possibly overcome? And I think it was a quest for knowledge. Walker really wanted to know what happened to Conrad and why they were doing this. But at some point, you got to look at it and say, is it worth it? Is the evil that we will have to continue doing worth what we've already done?
And the characters decided that it was. And
well, the two, Lugo and Adams had no choice. I mean, they're good soldiers. They're brainwashed soldiers. And again, it's a terrible term. Some people agree with it, some don't. But subordinates have to follow their commanders, Otherwise, you're thrown in jail, And so I don't think either one of Lugo or Adams wanted to continue. Matter of fact, I think they tried to argue against it multiple times, but they had to because they are good soldiers.
That's something we should look up, actually, to see if that is the case, if they actually do. Because can't you, if you come back to your superiors and you say, hey, this guy is a psycho and he made me do these crazy things.
You can get out of war crimes for that in some cases, but most of the time they look at it and they hold you accountable. You are your own person. You're supposed to make your own decisions.
There's risk in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can be court-martialed very quickly, and that for me is probably the biggest reason I never went into the military, was I realized that I have very few choices of my own. If I went in the military, I've got to abide by whatever my superiors tell me to do, because that is the military life. I get it. You can't have 1,000 people with their own thought process wanting to do their own things. Everybody has to understand rules, regulations, and follow orders. Otherwise, you would have massive chaos. But at the end of the day, if you know something is completely wrong, and I think both Lugo and Adams said it during the course of the game, what are we doing this shit for? This doesn't make sense. At that point, you would hope the humanity kicks in and you say, I'm done being a soldier. I'm not going to continue this.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. It was a mind fuck, that's for sure.
Yes, it was.
I just, you mentioned the phosphorus scene. I believe that was the scene where the fiance walked in shortly after that, and I felt disgusted with myself, especially after finding out that it wasn't the people that we thought it was.
Yeah,
that was heartbreaking to hear at that point. Even being that engrossed in the story at that point, I guess that's the point of the game, is that without a question, I was into the story. I was into the game as much as I hated it. I hated it because I was into it and because they made it believable and they made it feel like I was participating in these terrible things. So kudos to the developers and the writers for making that happen.
Oh yeah, it was a very, very well done game. I just, as you said, I would like to sit down and make sure the reasons they did it were for the reasons we believe they did, rather than just to fuck with people.
I would doubt that. It is art after all. And so the point I was going to make about that is, you just reminded me, I think that if you think about games today and playing it safe and making easy games that, I'm going to make sequel number 7 in the series and it's going to sell millions of copies because everybody loves this series or this character, and I'm going to throw out some bullshit generic story and everybody's going to eat it up because they've loved the last ones. To me, there's so much more value in guys that take a risk. And these developers, this writer, these people, they took a huge risk with this game.
Oh, absolutely. It's like Hollywood. Do you just go with the blockbuster sequel, or do you actually try something new? Do you go with an indie? And as everybody I've ever heard says, well, after you make all your money, then you can start to do things you want to do. But it seems like, and I don't know these guys as developers, I don't know what else they've done, but whoever did this definitely went, as you said, went out on a limb and said, you know what, I want to make this. This is something that's for whatever reason, because it's true to my heart. I want people to think about these things. It was a huge risk. This is definitely it's not a feel good game at all.
No, absolutely not. It was, you're right. Not feel good at all.
No. There's no way. And I would be interesting. So anyone listening to this, if at the end of this, and you want to throw in the comments, if you felt good at the end of this game, please let us know why.
Please don't. Please don't let us know why.
I'm curious about the psychological standpoint.
I understand, and I bet that there are some ex-military people that probably, it made them feel some different shit that you and I couldn't possibly feel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I would guess. I have so much respect for people in the military that, have to go through these things because, like you pointed out, there are other people making decisions and they are sworn to service and they do it no matter what. Hopefully this is just a very far-fetched story that actually does not occur. Obviously I think if it was something like this, we would hear about it. We've heard about things like this over the course of history, but nothing more recent. Because some of it was just horrible.
Yeah. to be totally honest, I believe this happens almost on a daily basis, but on a very, very smaller scale. Like, I mean, the fact that, we went through and killed 1,500 people at least, I don't think that happens. But I truly believe there are people that, end up having to kill a couple of people here and there daily that they may not have wanted to, but they had to because of, their orders and stuff.
I would agree with you in the terms of that the emotion occurs. The emotion or the, situations occur where they have very difficult decisions to make about who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, but not to the scale of that this story suggests.
No.
Okay. I want to make sure we're on the same page there.
Well, except, Vietnam, when we dropped Agent Orange, it does happen throughout the course of history. I think in different contexts, like I don't think it's ever going to be 3 guys killing that many, but I think there were definitely soldiers that have had to on a larger, like Hiroshima. That was the same concept. We're dropping a bomb to end a war, to finish a mission where we are killing thousands, tens of thousands of innocent people. So war is a bitch.
So I again, safe to say that we both enjoyed it.
Yes, enjoyed the gameplay.
Enjoyed the story.
I didn't enjoy the story. I didn't. How do I explain this? It immersed me incredibly. It drew me in, but I didn't at any point after the first hour enjoy it. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. I think as I sit back and reflect on it, though, I appreciate the game more for its story and the risks it took with its story, the choices that it put me through, than I do for any of the gameplay decisions that the controller gameplay. Yeah. Generic gun, third person cover based shit. That's great. But for me, the reason that I would and will recommend that others play this game is for the incredible story and the risks that it took.
Yeah, I was actually just reminded me, the one other thing we're talking about, I don't know if this is gameplay or story, the one thing that drove me nuts towards the end, it wasn't specifically about the story, it was just the sheer amount of guys they threw at you.
Oh yeah, they challenged you at the end.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And even during the course of the game, it was very challenging, but it went so far beyond reality, and it's just
sure.
It's tough for me because I'm such a logical reality-based guy. That there were times I was like, oh my God, this is just not going to happen. I just wanted to, but I think that was mainly tied into I just wanted this to end. Games
don't always work for you.
No, they don't.
It's too out of touch with reality, but it is still fiction, and you need to remember that.
It's true.
True. Or not. It's up to you. So was it worth your time?
Yeah. I as we've talked about, I think, it was only 6 hours, so it wasn't a whole lot of time. I definitely think that, because I had to finish it. I definitely know it was worth my time, both from a thought-provoking standpoint as well as just kind of an
entertainment.
Yeah, an entertainment, enjoyable gameplay standpoint.
That's good. I would agree. And it was worth my money. It was worth your money?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I think we can both easily recommend this to other people. Just know what you're getting when you're coming in.
There you go. But definitely a game I think is worth, everybody should play it, especially people who like shooters. Just go in with an open mind and realize at some point you are going to be frustrated. If you're not a good human being.
So let's talk about the choices. Spoiler alert. The first choice that I remember having to make was the supposed CIA agent and being interrogated by the
33rd.
By the 33rd corporal, lieutenant, whatever he was.
Yeah. Well, so the CIA agent was actually interrogating the 33rd guy.
Thank you.
The 33rd guy had escaped and killed the CIA guy. And then we had the choice on whether we shoot the 33rd. But at that point, we were still...
Because he kills the CIA guy in front of us.
Correct.
And then we say, okay, well, shit. We've got our own government is clearly fighting with each other now. Now we have that confirmed.
Yeah. But at that point, we still thought the 33rd was led by Conrad and they were good people.
And we had only fought the locals up to that point.
We killed a couple of military guys. But yes, for the most part, it was just local.
Because I thought that happened, and then you drop down, you go into the next section.
Oh, yeah,
and that's where you go,
yeah.
oh, shit, we're the 33rd. We're the government. Hey, we're the government,
Yep, you're right.
We're military.
We watched a couple of our soldiers get killed before that point, but we never actually shot any of them. That's right.
Yeah, so that was sort of the first turning point of what are you going to do? And I watched you play, and what decision did you make your first playthrough?
I shot the motherfucker in the head.
Yeah, you shot the 33rd just
33rd,
without question.
Yeah, but on the flip side, it's interesting because when I went back through and actually watched it, I realized I thought I was shooting the CIA guy.
Right.
But I realized I was actually shooting the 33rd. I didn't actually watch him escape and those roles flip. I think I would have shot either one because at that point I was so frustrated with what was going on, just random killing. And I was looking at it saying, this is obviously, as soon as they introduced the American, that was right before that scene, said that this guy's American, they're led by the Americans. I was like, screw this, these guys are bad people.
That's right. It does happen just before that. And you said, I'm not going to kill American soldiers. I'm done. And you almost put down the game at that point.
Yep.
But you didn't. You stuck with it. I talked you into it. I said, just keep going.
It was like you. I had to get to the end. I had to find out what in the world was actually going on. And it sucked that we went from fighting, the insurgents to all of a sudden all we were fighting was the 33rd.
I made the choice to not kill that guy, the 33rd, because I still had hope that I was a hero. At that point I was kind of clinging to the conventions of normal war video games that I was the hero and I'm not going to kill this guy. He can kill the CIA guy. I don't know everybody's story. I'm not going to kill you until I know your story. So I just laid off.
Yeah. You've been watching too much Joseph Campbell in the hero story.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay.
But then I just come down the next, drop down there and you're in that bunker and pretty soon it's all out war with the 33rd. And so then you go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then it's on.
Yeah. And
then it's fucked from there because I don't really know who's who and who's Riggs and who's who. I don't understand it.
Yep.
It was a little bit confusing, but I think that part of that might have been intentional.
Oh, absolutely. I think they kept everything very vague as to who are the good people, who are the bad people. I mean, even at the end, we heard the CIA, the guy gets shot, we hear his story, and then we meet Gould. Gould saves us, and Gould is CIA. Gould
is the next choice.
Yeah.
All right. So Gould is the next choice, and who is interrogating Gould?
The 33rd again. I don't know. It was one of their corporals, one of their commanders.
And Gould is CIA?
Gould is CIA, correct.
Okay. And at this point, what decision do you make?
Well, so at this point, it was interesting. We were forced to make the decision, do we save Gould or do we save the citizens? So the refugees, the people we were supposed to be sent to save. And Adams wants us to save the refugees. Lugo tells us, no, we need to save Gould. At this point, I was so mad at the 33rd, I just blew all three of their heads off. The three guys surrounding Gould.
I did the same.
Yeah, I was at that point, I was just so pissed at these guys, so I didn't even, and well, the thing is, I didn't know how we could save the refugees because I didn't really see where that was. So I didn't know that was a true option. I knew it from them telling us we should, but I didn't actually know how to go about doing that. But even if I knew how to do that, honestly, I would have still killed those three guys.
Now you touched on an interesting point there because you just said you were so pissed at the 33rd by then. I was too. I was so upset that this was happening, and I knew that they had to have been responsible for everything that I've seen before that and after that, and it was their fucking fault, and I was pissed about it. And so, fuck you, you're all dying. CIA's got to be the good guys here, because I've seen Homeland, and I know that the CIA are trying to be the good guys. Right.
We hope.
So
we better
exactly.
hope. The NSA is listening now, so we better say they're good.
But it didn't even matter because I was so fucking pissed at them, just like you mentioned. And, and that was the same choice I made. But then Gould dies right away.
But we get Gould's mission, so we at least have something to go for. And it was, it was the point at that point we knew the 33rd they were no longer good guys. That was what we were led to believe. We were no longer good guys. They were just trying to take over. They were going against the American way, and they were just trying to take over Dubai and own it for themselves and all this kind of stuff. But interesting because it flipped at the end.
I agree. There was a lot of back and forth and twists and turns, and I can't keep them all straight. The next choice that I remember, was it the freeway overpass, or do we meet Riggs first? Or
it was freeway overpass.
Freeway overpass is the next choice, and that choice is this man stole water, which is a precious resource here.
Local refugee.
Yep, he stole the water so his family could live. And then a person that was a local vigilante.
No, he was a member of the 33rd.
Was he a 33rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was sent to kill the guy, and he ended up killing the guy's family. All
he killed
like
5
3
people.
kids. Yeah, 5 people, 4 kids and his wife, I believe, or something.
And we are asked to judge. We are asked to judge one or the other, and kill one or the other.
Yeah. What was your choice?
Because they're both going to kill. I instantly I zoomed in on the guys that were the snipers that were lining them up, and I picked them all off. And then, of course, the guys hanging from the bridge got killed anyway. But I made my choice to kill the military people, or whoever they were. Who were they? Were they the 33rd? They were Conrad's guys.
Yeah. And then, so how does the ending, knowing both those guys were dead, make you feel about it?
Well, yeah, because I just caused more death and destruction, right? And that's where I got to a point where I felt like, why?
Well,
what's the point? What's the fucking point?
Yeah, more at that point, I'm thinking, if I'm Lugo and Adams standing here looking at my commanding officer, my CO, and he's staring at these 2 people hanging that have been dead, obviously, in my eyes, for a long time.
But they're not. They're still alive.
No, they're dead. So do you remember the cutscene where we actually saw both people were both dead?
So no, they're alive at that point.
No, they aren't.
They're hanging by their hands.
Yeah, no, they're not actually alive. So if you get to the end of the movie, so there are 3.
I like that you just called it a movie.
Well, it's what it felt like. So there were 3 or 4 scenes in there when we start to realize that Walker isn't as sane as he thinks he is. And there's questions. Like at the very end, do you remember the time he came up and there were the 7 guys who were members of the 33rd, all in chairs. They'd all been dead for a while, obviously killed by Conrad. And he was talking to Conrad on the walkie-talkie. Well, he flipped it over and the walkie-talkie was dead. So the whole time Walker's having a conversation with Conrad, remember, Conrad's already dead. He's been dead for a long time. So
is he?
Yes, he was. So remember, we found him in the chair and he'd been shot. He'd killed himself. We walked out to the balcony. So what happened is all of that was in our mind. We were so driven to get to Conrad that we lost our sanity along the way. So those 2 guys were actually dead. They were already dead bodies, already hung, and we envisioned that they were both alive, and we were given a choice by Conrad. But Conrad at that time was dead. So it started to make me wonder after the end. Obviously, we didn't know that until the very end. I was like, how are these 2 guys, Lugo and Adams, taking all this? But I did the same thing you did, and I immediately shot the 4 guys, hoping I could at least save one of the people because I thought they were still alive. But even though I knew they were going to die, I still wanted to kill those guys.
It's really interesting that you said that because I did not even think for a second that had happened. I didn't even think at all that those guys were ever dead before I made that decision.
So coming up to that decision, I thought they were alive as well.
Did you go back and watch it again and see that they were dead, or are you just putting it all together?
It showed it to you at the end of the game.
I missed that.
Yeah.
I totally missed that.
It replayed about 3 or 4 scenes in the game that weren't the reality we experienced going through. Because
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, we were in Walker's insanity. We were seeing things the way he saw them, but what he saw wasn't actual reality.
Wasn't actual reality. Yep. I remember seeing that and being like, what the fuck? But it didn't make sense to me at the time, but now that you explained it, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what it was. And, I was looking at it saying, so in that situation where we thought they were both alive, we did the same thing. We were like, screw this, fuck these guys. I don't want to kill either one of these guys. I don't want to kill an innocent. I want to kill the bastards who are trying to kill innocents. If they shoot the guys, that's not on me, that's on them. So that's why I tried to kill the snipers. But it also caused me to think after the game. I was like, well, what in the hell are Lugo and Adams thinking right now?
So where does Riggs fit in?
So Riggs was shortly after this.
Right.
So we ran in the aquarium. We meet up with Riggs. Riggs is getting shot at by the 33rd. And he says, hey, we need help.
Did that really happen?
Yes.
Who is Riggs?
So Riggs is CIA.
Okay.
And Riggs said that we're going to go take all the water, 25,000 gallons out of the aquarium.
That's right.
And we're going to take this water and we're going to save the people.
That's right.
Well, it turns out the 33rd was actually trying to save the people. The 33rd made the decision to stay in Dubai, go against their orders to try to save the people of Dubai.
Try to help people.
Yeah. But we were told so often that no, the 33rd is gone against America. They're no longer following orders. They're all on their own. They're doing these bad things. But we actually come to find out Riggs is bad. Riggs is really bad. Riggs tried to steal the water for himself. As a matter of fact, when he crashed the trucks, Riggs said, there's a roadblock we can't get through. Fuck this. I'm destroying the water. Nobody gets to have this water.
Yeah, that's right. I do remember that.
So if he truly cared about the people, there's no way he would have gotten rid of the last water in all of Dubai. But Riggs just basically did it on his own. So the CIA, it's interesting because we go from the first CIA guy who gets shot, we know very little about, to meeting Gould. Gould saves our lives and directs us, but he doesn't really tell us a lot. And then he dies, and we find out his mission. We meet up with Riggs, who's working with Gould, but it sounds like Riggs gone off on his own, and Riggs is doing his own thing. Now, whether or not that was the CIA's intent all along, I don't know. Sounds like the CIA.
Or did he just go rogue?
Exactly. So the end of it, it's like, okay, who is rogue in this? Is it the 33rd? Is it us? Is it the CIA? Is it the insurgents? I mean, who?
I feel like we got caught in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
And went crazy. So, okay, so let's jump to the end then. We see he's the painting of the mother and the child, missing the eye. So what's the significance of that to you?
Those are the people we killed. Remember the mother and child. Remember when we walked in the group after the mortar scene, the phosphorus scene? The mother and child were sitting in the middle. Yes. That was a painting of that scene before.
Right, but we walked through it. The reality was this had already been done.
I don't think so.
You think we did that when we did the phosphorus attack?
I don't think that painting nor Conrad existed. I think that was a figment of our imagination.
No, but I'm just saying, when we walk, let's go back to after the phosphorus scene.
Mm-hmm.
We're walking down through and we find all the families and all the people in that
we did that.
Area. Did we do that at the time of the phosphorus attack?
Yes.
Or were those people already dead before we got there?
No. So do you remember the phosphorus scene? So the mortar scene. So we end up blowing up a couple of soldiers. We end up blowing the Humvee. We get a couple tanks. The very end, there were 2 tanks, and there were a whole bunch of people that looked like soldiers. There were like 50 of them just sitting in a row.
Okay.
Those were the people.
I do.
Those were the people. So we killed all those people.
And did you play through that part twice? Have you gotten to that part twice?
Yeah.
Okay, so that explains it. It is certainly one of those games that you could play 2 or 3 times just to get. It's like a movie that you have to watch 2 or 3 times to get all the little subtleties.
Yeah, but I also I spent the time and found most of the intel, so I was able to get stories and extract stories from the intel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was like the radio man interviewing a couple of people at the 33rd. It was conversations with Riggs. You learn about him. You learn more about Conrad. So you get a lot of the backstory through the intel.
Interesting. This is great. I'm glad that you learned all this, because I didn't. I took it more as what it was on the surface. So this is awesome.
Oh, it was so, and that's as you said, it's they took a risk. It's so beyond the surface. Like, you look at it and say, okay, God, I just did that, and then all of a sudden you finished it, and you're like, holy shit, everything I thought that I did wasn't actually truth. And now you've got to process those layers back through and go, holy shit, well, then all this kind of stuff. At the end of it, it's like, what's real, what's not? And that's interesting because, the very end, and this comes down to the last spoilers, the decision we're forced to make. And then I actually looked through all of the endings.
Before you get there, did you kill Riggs?
Yeah,
no,
I let him burn.
Did not. You let him burn.
I let him burn both times.
Really?
Yeah,
I killed him.
No, did you? Did he get an achievement for that or anything?
I did.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got it, because I wasn't going to kill him. I looked through the achievements and realized it wasn't one of them. I didn't want to kill him. I mean, after knowing what he did, there was no way I was going to kill him.
I guess at that point I didn't know what he did. I just knew he helped us, and at that point I was still thinking, this is fucked up, but maybe I'm still a hero.
Yeah.
I hadn't dug into the deep layers like you had.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we never helped him, and even when we tell him, dude, what the fuck are you doing? We just helped you. He's like, whoa, hold your horses there, kid. You think you're badass. You did this, you did that. When our first introduction to Riggs is us saving his ass and his guy's ass. We got rid of the 33rd. Without us, he would have died. And he can't even acknowledge it then. And then he just uses us the entire way through.
Interesting. All right, so let's get down to the end then. So the final choice, and this was the one that sort of freaked me out when I saw it. And you didn't see it at first.
No.
My first choice that I made when I went up, and I understand that it was weird. It was a mirror. You were seeing things you couldn't quite understand.
Well, we thought we were talking with Conrad.
Oh, and I did.
Yeah,
I did when I walked up there. Even though I saw him, that I saw that Conrad had killed himself, or that there was a rotting body there, or whatever.
Well, we didn't see that until after the decision, did we?
No, you see that before at the start, because there's the painting, and then you walk behind the painting out to the edge there, and there's the body. And then you meet him, and I thought, well, maybe this is just a prop. Because to me, I don't know what's reality and what's not. So to me, I thought, well, this is a prop, and he's just fucking with my head. They've been fucking with me the entire time. But then he starts to tell me I'm crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay, because we see Conrad's body. He's in his uniform, so we know he killed himself. And then we talk to Conrad. And
but again, I don't know if he really has killed himself, because I don't know what the fuck to believe at that point. So here's the decision I make. I look at him, pointing the gun at him.
Yeah.
I turn the mouse, and then it points the gun at me.
Yes, I didn't see that.
And I go, shit, I'm not doing that. Even though I feel like doing that, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I turn the gun back on him, and he's counting to 5. And he counts, and he kills me. And I don't kill him. I don't do anything. I just let him kill me because I'm like, you know what? If he is real, and I've done all these terrible things.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what reality is anymore. So I'm going to chance it. I'm going to let this fucker count to 5 and see what he actually does.
Okay.
He killed me.
Yeah, I killed him. I killed him only because at that point I didn't realize. I just figured it was still a cutscene, so I didn't realize I had control. And he got to like 4, and I realized, I have a little control over the gun. My gun was pointed at him. I was like, fuck this! I just pulled the trigger. It's like I just want it over. I just want it done.
Well, and that's sort of where I did too. I mean, we both wanted it done, but explain to me how you can kill a guy that doesn't exist.
Well, how can a guy that doesn't exist kill you?
Fair.
Yeah. That was it, at the end.
Very fair.
Yeah. At the end, it wasn't reality at all.
It was more of a metaphor.
Yeah. And I think in allowing him to kill you, I think, in reality, you killed yourself. I don't know what the cut.
That's sort of where I was going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the cut scene after that?
The cut scene after he killed me?
Correct. Do you remember?
Does he
talk about home and there is no home and we can't go back?
No, okay. I don't think so. I think it ends pretty quickly after that. We'll have to go back and test it.
Yeah. When I ended up killing Conrad, so it cuts to the scene where we're waiting for the military to come pick us up.
I did that part. I went back and played that ending.
Okay. So you saw it where the 2 Humvees come up, the 8 guys get out.
And they're like, hey, bud. And then all of a sudden he's got the gun pointed at them and they're like, whoa, dude, we're here to pick you up or whatever. I dropped the weapon.
Okay. So I did that the first time and then I went through and played it again and I didn't drop the weapon. I just wanted to see. So I shot the guys and they end up killing us. And then he does the same conversation about there is no home. I can't go home. It is a thought-provoking game. But it is a frustrating game.
Frustrating in what way?
Just because I think for me, the frustration came from the fact that I was forced to make these decisions and I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of control. Like at some point, I really wish I had the ability to just say, no, fuck this, I'm going home. And just put the game down. But in order to finish the game, you were forced to make bad decisions. Like think about the scene with the 2 guys hanging. Either you kill a refugee who just stole water, you kill a soldier who inadvertently killed the family, or you have to shoot a bunch of soldiers. None of those choices is a good choice. I mean, you're killing somebody at some point.
Agree.
We're looking at saying, do we kill 1 of 2 innocents? It's innocent, slightly innocent, bad people. So all the decisions made were bad decisions. We didn't have a lot of choice. But it was also, for me, I really wanted it over because there was just so much bullshit. The amount of people coming at me, the amount of things happening, the things I had to kill, like the last scene, the bunker scene. You've got all these people coming at you, and then you've got all these nests you've got to get. You have no freaking weapons. You got a couple RPGs. You got to go do this. You got to do that. And it was just so many fucking people coming at me.
That last scene is a pain in the ass.
No, it's just unbelievable. I mean, to power through that was tough for me.
Yeah, it was, especially after a 6-hour stretch.
Yeah.
When you're not enjoying it anymore.
Yeah. I think I got to that last scene at about 5 hours in, and it took me an hour to get through that last scene.
Oh, wow.
That was by far the longest I spent on any particular period.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I know part of the reason it took me so long was because I was so frustrated. I just ran into stuff because I just wanted to kill everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think I ended up sending some orders in, or I saved some of the rockets.
Yeah.
I saved the rockets and ran up ahead and then hit some rockets into the bunkers. It's the only way I could do it. Finally got over to that. I got over to the bunker over here, took the guys out over there.
Yeah.
Kind of inched my way that way.
Yeah. That was the only, I figured it out, that I sat back trying to blow everyone up, and I realized you had to inch your way up. And as you did, your guys would advance and you could take people out.
Yeah.
But
it was brutal.
Yeah, it was.
Absolutely brutal. Great game, though, I have to say. Complaints and frustrations aside, an incredible experience for a video game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a very, very, very good game. It was one that I didn't honestly think I would ever play again. But as I said, I'm playing through it again.
You're already in it again, yeah.
Already in it again. And, as you go through, it's easier to play the second time just because you've already immersed yourself. Yeah, you know what's going on. You can cut through the cutscene, so it's much faster. But it's, from a gameplay standpoint, it's an enjoyable game. It's very intuitive. It's well done. It's well put together. A couple of frustrating moments with controls, but few and far between. But from a decision-making standpoint and a thought-provoking standpoint, be ready to question your sanity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But to me, that was the part that drew me in. The gameplay, it's okay. It's pretty good, decent, but doesn't make me want to come back and keep playing over and over again. But the story would.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference between us.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Go play the game.
Yeah, and let us know your thoughts when you're done.